Okay, so we were talking a little bit about some of these. I'm going to sit down right here.
Cool.
So, we were talking about some of the things that you saw when once we've added the these nodes to the routers. Should we wait? Oh no, back there. Okay, good. Just making sure we got everybody. Making sure. I think there's people in every seat that was in the seat, so that's good. Once you've added things to these audio routers, we were showing you this route names tab. And this route names tab is pretty useful because from here you can actually affect, so these are not particularly useful descriptions. Source 1, source 2, source 3, source 4. If you, by default, if you don't change any of those descriptions on your devices, everything's going to show up as source 1. So if you go looking for a source and you sort alphabetically, you're going to see you're going to have dozens of source 1s, right? So one of the things that you can do from this route name screen is you can rename these devices. SAT1, okay? So once I hit done on this, what this will do is this will actually push that change back out to the node. So if you want to use this, you can rename all of your sources and destinations on your nodes by logging into each of them individually. But if you want to change them in here, and everybody saw how I got to this, clicked on my audio router, hit route names, expand that back out a little bit. You can change all of your source names right from this screen right here.
Brian, does this assume that the nodes are all running in mono mode for 8 IOs, or
yeah, so
do these happen to be in mono mode?
These do not happen to be in mono mode, but that's what I was saying earlier, is that when you go out and you discover a device, it knows that there really are, okay, so think about an Axia device as really two separate devices. There's the analog or AES facility that's on that node, right? And then there's the Livewire component. And they're really two separate components from each other. And they're mapped internally in that node based on how you configure it. So a node can have a maximum of 8 Livewire sources and 8 Livewire destinations. Now it just happens to be that there's only 4 analog audio connections on an X node. So you can't configure 8 stereo inputs on an X node. There's just not enough analog inputs in there. But one of the things that you can do is you can take that first analog input and say left channel is now Livewire output number 1. And that will make a mono source out of that input, right? So there's this mapping internally that sort of goes on. So an X node can do 8 analog in, 8 to the 8 Livewire outs, right? And then there's the 8 outputs on the destination side, which can either be mono or 4 stereo, right? And then they get mapped internally to those Livewire sources. But really, when Pathfinder goes and discovers the device, it's really showing that on this particular node here, it's really showing 8 sources that are on that node, even though I have 4 analog audio inputs. And that's because I could configure that for 8 mono inputs. So it's gone out and it's found all of those sources, and it says, here they are, right? It doesn't know that you've got them enabled. It doesn't know that they're configured for mono. It doesn't know any of that stuff. It just knows that those are 8 Livewire sources, okay? So that's why you're seeing on a 4x4 stereo node, that's why you would see 8 sources. But you may not ever use those last 4 sources, or you might use some combination of them, right? The first one might be 2 mono inputs, and then everything else would be stereo, in which case we'd have 6 Livewire sources, 2 mono, 3 stereo. We'll work out to 6? 5, right? So one of the things that we do in Pathfinder is we allow you to be able to, first of all, change the names, right? So you have a kind of a common point where you can come back and manage the names of the sources. And then we allow you to be able to hide. So let's say on this particular node, I've wired it all in for my satellite receiver. I'm not ever going to use the additional 4 outputs because I don't have any more inputs on that on the analog side. I can go hide these from the system, and it's really as if they're not even there. None of the client will see them. They won't show up in any drop-down lists. You can't route to or from them. It's as if they've been taken completely out of the Pathfinder database just by virtue of the fact that we've hidden them, right? So it just allows us to be able to, you know, not have, think about a mix engine, for example, right? My mix engine I have 16 virtual mixers in a mix engine times 5 inputs. So what's the math on that? 5 times 16, that's 80 sources that I may not ever use. And if I just want to sort of keep my stuff at a manageable list, I could go and find those virtual mixers that aren't used, and I can just disable them, right? Hide them, essentially. They're not disabled. They still work in the Axia world. I could go, you know, I could take a virtual mixer and I could mix my control room monitor and my preview speaker together. I could run that output somewhere. But if I hide them, Pathfinder can't control them or doesn't know anything about them, right? So the hide box is just a way to help control the list of sources that you see when you hit drop-down lists and are navigating through clients and things like that, okay? So, and that's the same on the destination side as well. We've got hidden boxes for all of my sources and all my destinations. And then one of the other things that's new, it used to be that in Pathfinder I had both a silence threshold level and a clipping threshold level. So one of the things that you can do in your stack events is you can monitor sources and destinations for both silence and clipping, right? And the node basically, the mechanics of it work like this. When you set a silence threshold, it now pushes that silence level back out to the node and says, here's your silence level for these inputs. So it's not, what's not happening is Pathfinder's not constantly monitoring a node saying what's your level, what's your level, what's your level, what's your level, what's your level. That's just way too busy. We push that configuration back out to the node, and if the level falls below that, then the node reports that it's silent. So it's a single command from the node back to Pathfinder that says I'm silent, or now I'm not silent. Understand the difference between actually watching the meters full time and just having the node say, hey, I'm silent, right? So to that end, if you were, you know, we have some people that like to write their own software that can monitor for silence, and they'll just log into the node and they'll wait for the node to say I'm silent or I'm not, right? So this information, although we're setting it here, is really pushed back out to all of the devices. And then the device reports that condition when it happens rather than this real-time monitoring that goes on. And that's the same thing for the clip level. So the silence and clip levels that you see on this menu, right, because I'm doing it on Pathfinder server, that's a global setting. That information is passed back out to every device. But on the individual devices, I have way more granular control, right? On this satellite source, maybe it's a particularly noisy satellite, so it would never fall below that minus 80 dB because it's always got this audio in it, a Marty receiver, you know, just things that are particularly noisy. So what I may want to do on that particular device is I may want to change that clip level to something different, right? And so once I change that clip level, or the silence level, that again will be pushed back out only to that individual input on that node, right? So it gives you very granular control over what gets reported as silence. And then on the clipping side, if I wanted to change the clipping level on either the sources or the destinations, I can do that all from right here. Okay, so just, you're gonna get home and you're gonna do this and you're gonna go, where were those silence thresholds again. So they are in the route names for the particular router that you're on. Same thing with the GPIO. Oops. Stop it. I can hide them there. Obviously, GPIO has no clipping or silence threshold because they just wouldn't be that way, right? But if I have GPIOs that I'm not using, I can go in and hide them from the system here again, just to control, what's shown in that list. Any questions on that so far?
Just to clarify, the hidden option is within Pathfinder, so if you're looking at a node on iProbe or something like that, you'd still see.
That's correct. And you can still log into the node and change it and control it and do anything you want with it, through the normal web interface on all the devices. It's just that, you'll hide this, you're going to go to the node and you're going to say, I need this additional input for something, an off-air monitor, a new satellite receiver. You'll plug it in and all of a sudden it won't show up in Pathfinder. And you'll say, oh, okay, well, I know what's going on there. I need to go to my automatic source and destination editions and turn that back on. And you'll turn it back on and it still won't flip and show up. And it won't show up because you've actually gone one step further and you've hidden it, right? So if you hide things, you kind of got to remember, you got to remember that you've hidden them, because hidden is hidden. It's gone once it shows up, or once you hide it.
It never leaves that list, route names list, though, right?
Correct. It'll always be in that route names list. Any questions on that?
One quick question.
Yeah.
You're looking at version 5.0 here, right?
Yep.
What differences between this and what I might have for 4.6?
Are you running 460? No, you're running 499 or something like that. It's in that version.
Okay. Well, are there differences?
There are. This hidden feature and the ability to have that granularity on the. Oops, sorry, I'm on that. That's just. So the ability to be able to control that with that level of granularity shows up in what amounts to version, the 5.0 release candidate. It's not in the 4.6 release. So if you go back home, you go to your Pathfinder, you're running 4.6, and you go, hey, I can't find this hidden option. Well, you need to upgrade to this newest version. Lots of people are running this version. Believe it or not, our very largest installations are all running this version because they need to be, right? One of the projects that we did was a large uplink network in New York. They've got about 500 Axia devices, not Livewire channels, devices, multi-channel drivers, X nodes, GPIOs, and so you can imagine their list of sources is thousands of devices, and they needed better granularity for monitoring silence. What is silence, what's not, right? Some people might send them an audio channel. We're talking about Purchase, New York. It's the Westwood One, ABC, Cumulus, Westwood One, whatever it is today, right? They wanted better granularity with regard to silence and clipping, so that's where this was born from. But if you want it, go to pathfinderpc.com. You can download those updates, and it's a very easy process to update those. So feel free, right? It's in other words, I guess what I'm saying is, don't be concerned about the fact that this is technically still beta, because it's really just a paperwork thing. So lots of people are running the 5.0 release candidate. So. Questions on that?
Is the granularity silence level, is it pushed more than once, or is it only pushed when you do this initial to the node?
Yes. When you change it, it'll push it out.
But if you then go to the node and change it, whoever updated last.
You can't change the silence level or the clip level on a node from the web interface.
Yeah, but Pathfinder software, is it he who updated last?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And there's the process for setting that on a node is you do two things. You log into the node, you send it a telnet command to set the silence level and the silence duration. In other words, how long does it have to fall below that level before it reports it? That's usually a very short duration of time, 500 milliseconds, whatever, right? We let it report it immediately, but then, so the question becomes, well, what if I want to set it to 30 seconds, right? I want it to be silent for 30 seconds. We allow the node to report the silence immediately, but the duration of time that we wait before we do anything is actually done in the stack event. So the stack event is where the 30-second timer is before you change a route or send an email or something like that. So Pathfinder sends the command out, and then it types the word save. And so that's permanently written into that node. If the node power cycles and reboots, that is maintained. But if some third-party software, other than Pathfinder, or let's say you logged in and you sent it the command by hand, because you can just, it's clear text, you can telnet in and you can send the silence level and the clip levels, and you didn't type save, next time that node rebooted, it would go back to whatever it was previously, right? So, but that's a very good point. If you've written your own software to do this kind of thing, last one in wins, right? It's going to be global, right? In other words, Pathfinder can't have one silence level and some other piece of software have a different silence level. The silence level is maintained in the node or on the physical device itself. So yes, that's a very good point. So, and we're clear that hiding it from here only hides it from Pathfinder, right? Okay. Let's see, what else did I want to? So let's talk about how it's, we've got about 20 minutes. So let's talk about other routers within Pathfinder, because one of the things we talked about was the difference between real routers and virtual routers. If I add a new router, one of the things that all the way down here at the bottom, there's this virtual router. And the virtual router, regardless of whether it's an audio router or whether it's a GPIO router, they are all subsets of the main routers, right? In other words, if it doesn't exist in the main audio router or the main GPIO router, I can't include it in a virtual router, okay? So I'm going to add a virtual router, and we'll just, for purposes of discussion, we'll call this virtual audio. Okay. Notice there's no discovery process. I'm just creating the router. When I hit finish, now I have this virtual audio router. There's nothing in it. So to populate this virtual router, simply go to route names, and it's going to show me everything that's in the router. And in terms of sources and destinations. So now really what I need to do is I need to start building this particular router. You can add things one at a time. My personal preference is to use this import routes button. And now it's going to ask me what router do I want to use to import the routes from. Notice that virtual router does show up, so I can use virtual sources from other routers and include those in other virtual routers, but everything's got to step back to that main audio router. So you might ask, why would I have, so this is a virtual router, but I can put, I'm just going to step through this here, you'll see what's going on. So here's all my list of sources and destinations. Notice how I can sort by any of these. All right, so if I'm looking for a particular devices to add, let's say maybe I'm looking to add all of the sources and all the destinations from a particular node. If I know what the IP address is of that node, I can come in here and sort by IP address, and I can use that. So I'm going to just pick everything from this .12, which looks like it's probably the Omnia 11, or maybe that's right. It's what?
Excellent.
Okay. Oh, because it's hooked up to the Omnia 9. So I can add all of those, and then on the destination side, I'm going to add these from another. Okay, so there's some source. There's sources from one node, destinations on another node. If I say import, done. Now I have some sources and destinations there. So I'm wrestling with how far to take this. We'll come back to this if you guys have any questions. This is so beyond just building a virtual router. This is 8 sources to 8 destinations. But let's assume for a moment that one of my destinations might be my transmitter feed. And so that destination might be one node that feeds that Omnia 9, but then maybe I've got another Omnia 9 or somebody else's processor out there that's hooked up to another node. And I want to be able to, from one take, I want to be able to affect both of those nodes. And maybe I want to have some GPIO follow it, right? So it's that GPIO follow audio sort of thing. So on this particular destination, this is my Comrex. Okay, if I hit edit route, I have one destination point, right? I can add another destination point to that route. That might be an output on a completely separate node somewhere. Does it make sense? So that, remove yourself from the fact that those destinations are physical devices for the moment. And think of that as destination number 1. Don't think of it as a node, it's just the first destination in the router, okay? If I edit this route, I can add multiple destinations to that entry. So I've got my main transmission path, and then if I pick something different, I'm just going to go through here and I'm going to pick another destination. So now what I have is on one particular node, I have destination 7, which is assigned to that, and then destination 2 on another node. Am I completely lost you at this point? Okay. So once I hit done, it doesn't show you that physically on the screen, but there are really now 2 destinations associated with that one output. Okay? Now, it's important that if you're routing to 2 destinations, that you have 2 sources that follow that. In other words, if I were to take source 5 and route it to destination 1, right now source 5 is only a single source in that list. Right? I haven't gone in and added any additional sources to that. So what would happen is I got 1 source to 2 destinations. Only that first real destination is really going to change because I haven't instructed it to have a second source. So on this particular source, I need to edit this route. I've got a single source in there, right? And now I need to give it something else to route to that other destination. Oftentimes it's the same source to 2 destinations. So I can come back in here, I have no clue what that is because my descriptions are terrible. If I just click add source, now I've added it twice. Okay, so anytime I take source 5 to destination 1, it's going to route both destinations at exactly the same time. Okay, so
Why would you need to send two different sources at that point when you just create another source? I mean that seems like that's the whole reason, is that you want the same source going to two different
yeah, there's the other way you could accomplish that is you could just create two. Okay, so a lot of different ways to change routes, right? You can change the route either using the Pathfinder client, right? You can say route this source to this destination. You can have them done as a Pathfinder stack event based on a GPIO or based on a time range or some other condition that's met. You can have them just as an event, a timed event. But one of the places where you might use this, so let's use our Westwood One facility. It's an uplink facility in New York. They got a bunch of Axia nodes which feed their satellite uplink. Well, they have a complete redundant satellite uplink. So there's two sets of audio nodes, two sets of audio encoders, right? Two sets of satellite uplinks. And what they want to do is, in order to not make this thing become unwieldy, they want to be able to change one route and have it affect both of those outputs. Now, David's point is valid. I can't think of a time where you'd want to route.
If you were doing in a situation where channel 1 was English and channel 2 was Spanish, and you just always wanted those to route together.
Yeah. Or maybe regionalized feeds. Say you own a group of radio stations where you got transmitter in first town, transmitter in the second town, transmitter in the third town, and you may have different commercials that you play to those three devices, and you're going to switch automation systems, right? Well, my backup automation system is down, which normally plays those three channels. I'm going to go to this backup automation system. So you might have a situation where, you'll have three different sources that go to three different outputs. But the point is, here in the virtual router, you can make those all. You take one route, and all of those sources and destinations are affected. And they don't even have to be. If I wanted to route, I can change my router to this GPIO router, and I could pick a GPIO node and add that as a source. And on my destination side, if I added some GPIO output, right, and we'll just pick one for purposes of changing it. Now what I have is I have two audio sources and one GPIO that are going to be routed to two audio outputs and a different GPIO. So I can route GPIO and audio in one shot. Make sense? Again, it's nuancy, right? Not a lot of people are going to do this, but this is advanced Pathfinder training. So, it's really just about, what I'm trying to show you guys is just the possibilities of things that are available here. You may not ever use this, right? But know that if you have a main and a backup transmitter, and you want to be able to control both of those routes all at the same time, every time, build them into a virtual router. You might do this. You might also change what's being logged if you have logging software, and you're changing what's feeding the transmitter, you also might want to change the route to your logging software. GPIO, your question about skimming, right? If you move from one studio to the other, you might want to route the contact closures, right, from whatever skimming facilities you're using to do that. So lots of possibilities here with regard to those virtual routes. So once I've got this the way that I want it, so you can change the name of the sources here. Oops, sorry, it's actually up here. Okay, so that's just a name of that route. That's not going to go back and change any of the sources on the nodes. That's just for purposes of how this particular source and I hate to use the term source because it's really, in this case, it's multiple sources, right? It's really just how that shows up within that virtual router. And then the same thing on the destination side. I can name it anything I want, just so that when somebody goes to, if you could try to tell an operator, hey, take and route the main audio source to, the main transmitter feed, right? He'll see those words in there because I need you to route source 7 to destination 5, right? Otherwise, if I don't change those names, that's what the operator is going to see, right? So name them anything you want, give them friendly names. It won't affect the operation of the system at all. So once this router is built, I can hit create closed, and it'll save that back to Pathfinder. So from a workflow standpoint, let's just go ahead and install. I'm just going to install the client here real quick. Client.
While that's installing, just to clarify, when you've got the list of multiple sources and destinations, it's always going to follow that the first source will route to the first destination.
That's correct, and right down the line, right? So if I had 3 sources and 1 destination, what's going to happen?
You're just going to get the first source.
I'm going to get this one here. These 2 aren't going to do anything, right? And then on the flip side of that, if I have a destination that has 3 sources or 3 destinations and only 1 source, what happens to those 3? Just the first one. The last 2 are not going to change, right? Okay. Good question. Thanks. Okay. Okay, so we're having a connection problem getting Pathfinder PC to connect to Pathfinder server. We don't know what the problem is yet, but we'll see. Up under, when you install Pathfinder PC, so Pathfinder PC is sort of the user interface. Your users probably are not going to walk up to Pathfinder server. Is it 12 already? I will get this working and we'll wrap this up and take a lunch break. Your users are probably not going to walk up to Pathfinder server and really do anything because you can't really affect any routes from Pathfinder server. I need the client software or a mini panel or a button panel or something like that to be able to affect the route. So when you first install Pathfinder PC, the client software, first thing we need to do is tell it what our server is that we're going to connect to. Edison, do you know what the IP address is of this?
Yeah, it's 1.10 or 127.0.0. 10.0 through 10.
You sure?
Yep.
Sometimes I hate that kid.
310, that one.
You know who should be teaching this class, right, David?
He's got school to go to though,
So, funny little story about Addison. Addison was a customer. How long ago? 2 years ago? East Valley Institute of Technology in Arizona. High school?
I see.
right? Addison spec'd, got it purchased, installed it, configured it, full Axia system with next gen on his own. Very little help from any of us.
And then you hired him.
Indeed. We said, come to Cleveland. It just so happens that he's going to college here, which works out great for us. So hopefully you guys will get a chance to talk to Addison in the support department when he's not at school. Monday mornings, Thursdays he's here all day, so if you can kind of work your schedule around his. So hey, there's the whole point is there's lots of things, even though some of us guys like to think we know it all. The kid gets it. Okay, so connect, and now all of a sudden down here I got no flashing, so I'm actually connected. He wants to know what router I want to control. I can either control my main audio and GPIO router, or here's that new virtual router. Oop. And we'll get into the client a little bit later, but you can see that these particular destinations, 5, destination 4, Comrex 3, they have nothing routed to them at the moment, right? And I can change sources and destinations by using these drop-down lists over here. So I can pick source 7, and I can run that to Comrex 2, and if I hit take, oh, I picked the disabled source. How do you like that?
You wouldn't have those problems if you're connecting to a zip one. It's the Comrex that's causing you the trouble.
Good point. Except it was the source that was disabled, not the destination. So that's one way to control the sources and destinations from within Pathfinder client. What I was striving to show you here is that by picking that virtual router, I only see the destinations and the sources that I've defined in that virtual router. The point was here not that we could actually make an audio route, but that I'm limiting the numbers of choices that I can actually make. Because I could go to this same audio router, and now I can see all of my sources and all of my destinations, and I can make the route that way. But sometimes it's easier to pick it out of the virtual router.
So what keeps our board ops and itchy fingers from grabbing the anything audio router and wreaking havoc?
Oh, grasshopper. Good question. In Pathfinder, so this is a good advanced feature, but in Pathfinder, in our users database, I can create users and I can control what routers they actually have access to. Okay? And then on the client side, you put a registry key in that says, here's the user that you're going to log in as. Right? There's no prompting mechanism to say what user do you want to use. It's just when they run that shortcut, that's the routers that they're going to see. So there's a little registry hack that says, hey, log in as this user, and then you can what you'd see is you'd only see that virtual router that we wanted to give them control of. So yes, you can protect it. And then one other little way on Pathfinder, let's keep database here, and then we'll take a break. Pathfinder client is this router. If I close this, so under toolbars, this is called my route control window. If I close this, then what I'll see is it really moves into more of 2 lists, right? If I pick pick a particular source, Comrex 2, if I want to route something different to it, I can double click on it and now that route is made. So I see all of my sources and all of my destinations in list form rather than having to try and pick that from that drop-down list. Right? So once you close that route control window, then this other window will open up here, and that's how you make those routes. And if you want to bring it back, bring my route control window back, and then I can use those facilities to change that. Any questions?